Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Nadiaxel and today I am giving you part 2 of my How to Become a Digital Artist series. Last time I mentioned the subjects that we're going to go through, and they are creating the correct document type for your drawing, making a workspace, shortcuts, introduction to brushes, layers and masks, and finally the very basics of blending. I'll be demonstrating everything today using Photoshop CC, and some of the subjects such as workspace and shortcuts may seem very limited to Photoshop, but the overall understanding of what you can do with digital art is more on a general level and stretches beyond Photoshop. The things that we're going to talk about in this video is on a very basic level, so there might be a lot of the stuff that you already know about, but by the end of this video I will talk a little about how you can help me select topics for a new mini tutorial / tips and tricks series that I will be doing on my channel. But first, the contents of this video, so let's get started. When you're creating a new document for a drawing, there are a few details that you can specify: the width and the height of the document, the measurement units, the document's orientation, the resolution, and the color mode. I always start out by choosing a preset equivalent to an A4 paper size, and that is for no other reason than the fact that A4 is the standard letter size in my country. Notice that there are several tabs up here. Only the newer versions of Photoshop show these tabs, and if you don't have them, then it doesn't matter because we'll be going over the preset details in a minute. The presets I select are usually on the Print tab. The Art and Illustration tab also have a lot of cool presets, but not really the dimensions that I usually use. Whether or not you decide to base your document on a preset or not, you should pay attention to the details over here. My document is now 210 by 297 millimeters. I can change this to another measurement unit if I want to see or adjust the document size in different units, for instance pixels or inches. The orientation of the document is determined by these two icons. Do you want a vertical or a horizontal oriented document? You decide. In the newer versions of Photoshop, you can also choose to work with artboards. Basically, it is equivalent to having several pieces of paper on the table in front of you instead of just one. The resolution is pretty important. It determines the pixel density of the document. I'm not going to go too much in depth with this, but here's an example. This piece is opened in full resolution at 300 DPI. Look at the little percentage indicator here at the bottom. It tells you how much you zoomed in on your drawing. This document has a resolution of 300 DPI, so I can zoom in a lot. This is the full resolution of the image. Now I'm going ahead and changing the DPI. I'm setting it to 72, which is the standard resolution for on-screen images. Look how little the image became. It's still the same size in millimeters, but by lowering the resolution, we lowered the pixel dimensions. There are now fewer pixels to cover the same area. If you want to draw crazy details, I suggest you have at least 300 DPI and up to 600 DPI. The standard resolution for print is 300 DPI. The higher the resolution, the crispier the image, but also the bigger the canvas to cover with your artwork. If you want to learn more about resolution and DPI, I have left some useful links in the video's description. The last thing to check before creating the document is the color mode. I suggest working in the RGB color space. Once again, I'll be leaving some useful links in the description of this video on color spaces if you want to dig further into it. It's pretty good to know, but it's not necessary. If you'd like to be able to quickly select this custom preset you've made anytime, save it by clicking this little icon up here. It will now appear under the Save tabs and ready for use anytime. Once you've created your document, you can always change it again by going to Image and Image Size. If you're working in Photoshop, you can customize yourself a workspace. Go to Window and make sure that all the panels you'll be using most frequently are visible. The panels I like to have visible at all time is Color and Layers. They're sitting out here to the right and docked into the frame. You can undock them by simply left-clicking and dragging them out. You can dock them again by dragging them back until you see this blue highlight. You can also adjust the size of the panels by dragging the center line between them. To the left of my colors and layers, I have a little collection of panels I often use, but I don't need them to be present at all time. I can unfold them simply by clicking on them, and I can also drag them out and rearrange them. If you don't have the rule up here, you can easily make it visible by clicking Ctrl R or Command R on the Mac. This shows and hides the ruler. When you've made a preset that you're happy with, save it by clicking this top right icon in the middle. Click New Workspace and name it and save it. Now if you ever mess up your panels or accidentally close something and you can't find it again, you can just go to a Workspace button and reset your workspace. And magically, everything comes back to where they're supposed to be. If you want to override your workspace with some new panels, you can just save it as a new workspace, but use the same name as you were using before. This automatically overrides it. I'm going to go through my favorite shortcuts. If you want to make your own shortcuts, go to Edit and Keyboard Shortcuts. There you can unbind and bind actions and tools to your keys. B is for brush. When you hit B on the keyboard, Photoshop selects the brush tool for you. E is for eraser. Get used to switch a lot between B and E instead of selecting them on the toolbar. It saves you a lot of time. Ctrl plus and Ctrl minus are zoom in and out. You can also use Ctrl Alt spacebar to activate zoom temporarily. Ctrl 0 makes your document fit into the frame you're working in, while Ctrl 1 zooms in at 100%. Ctrl H hides whatever is considered extras. If for instance you use the lasso tool to make a selection you want to paint, but those tiny walking ants are annoying you, Ctrl H temporarily hides the active selection while keeping it selected. The R is the rotation tool. Are you having a hard time drawing a line? Then you can rotate the canvas. You can always return it to normal again, and if you hold Shift while rotating, it will snap to angle points. My second most used shortcut is Alt. If you have a brush tool active and hold Alt, it then selects the eyedropper tool. The second you let go of Alt, the eyedropper disappears. This is extremely useful for blending, which I will return to later in this video. And now, my most used shortcut ever. And you probably already guessed it. It's Ctrl C, the undo shortcut. Ctrl C alone is reason enough to become a digital artist. Ctrl C simply undoes your latest interaction. Made a stupid stroke, boom, Ctrl C and it's gone. Like it never happened. Or did it? Because if you hit Ctrl C again, it comes back. What's going on? The later versions of Photoshop has two undo functions. One, Ctrl C, which undoes the previous interaction, but if toggled again, shows the interaction again. This is very useful if you're unsure of the thing that you just did was good or bad for the drawing. Use Ctrl C to shift between two states. If you truly regret an action or several actions, you must use the Ctrl Alt C. This keeps undoing your actions until you stop tapping, or at least until you reach the maximum amount of times you can undo. Layers are going to help you a lot. You can use them to organize your drawing or to keep backups of previous versions. You create a new empty layer by clicking this little icon down here. While I'm in the beginning phase of a new drawing, I like to use the layers to structure the different areas of my drawing. I will have one layer for the mockup, another for the sketch, and finally one for the line art. Then when it's time to start coloring, I hide the sketches and create layers for the color underneath my line art. Some like to structure the layers in colors, and others like it better when each layer represents some kind of area in the image. It's up to you to find out what works best for you. You can hide and unhide layers by clicking the eye, or you can lock them with this little lock icon. That just means that while it's locked, you can't work on it. This drop-down menu holds all the different blending modes for layers. This basically means how is this layer going to behave in relation to the other layers. Multiply, for instance, will multiply all the known values of the current layer with the values of all the layers below it. There are so many different blending modes, and you should just play around with them until you find your favorites. Also note that it's not necessary to use blending modes to create a picture. You don't even have to use them at all. Down here you can click this little circular icon and you can see some different options popping up. All of these are adjustment layers. They are empty layers which will create some sort of effect, and it will affect all the layers appearing below it. If you want to, for instance, adjust the contrast and brightness of your image, create this adjustment layer. If this little properties box does not appear, go to Window and make sure that Properties is not hidden. Adjust the sliders until you're satisfied with the result. If there's a specific area in the drawing where you do not want this specific effect, you can click on this little white box on the adjustment layer. This is a mask. White means apply this effect, and black means do not apply the effect here. Select your brush and pick black as your color. Now paint the area where you wish to erase the effect you have applied. If you erase too much, no biggie, just select white as your color and paint it back in. This is truly the beauty of masks. Probably the most used mask in digital painting is called the clipping mask. Say you have a layer in which you've painted a character's skin, and you'd like to paint on top of the skin, but only on the part that is already painted. You can create a new layer, right-click and select Create Clipping Mask. See this tiny little arrow that appeared? This means that anything you put on this layer will only be visible on the parts where the parent layer, in this case the skin layer, has value. If you need another clipping mask, you just create a new layer, and this time, because there's already a clipping mask present, you just drag it up underneath or above. This new clipping mask is still connected to the parent layer. It is not a clipping mask of a clipping mask. They're both clipping to the common parent layer. The brush panel probably holds some of the most exciting tools of digital art. Not only is there an amazingly amount of free standard brushes, but you can download others' brushes or even make your own. The most advanced brushes for Photoshop at the moment are the artistic brushes that came with the newer versions of Photoshop. I'm of course talking about the dry and wet media brushes. They are designed to be as close to traditional brushes as possible. They can be a little hard to get started with because some of them have a lot of settings that aren't exactly straightforward, but don't get scared by them. Watch some tutorials online on how to use them, they are truly amazing. However excellent they are though, I mostly use another brush set, mainly my own. My own brush set is a mixture of Photoshop's basic brushes and some brushes I've downloaded and created during the years as a digital artist. You can go a long way with just the basic brushes. It's not the custom brushes that will make your art great, it's the person holding the pen. Please remember that. Fancy brushes does not improve your art. You do. Although I have a somewhat big collection of brushes, I typically only use about 5 of them. These are the 5 main brushes that I use. If you use Photoshop, you can go download the brush set for free on my Gumroad. The link is in the description. Just click that brush icon, say I want this and download them, free of charge. Once you've downloaded your brush set, locate them on a computer. Now go into Photoshop and click on this little icon here with the 4 lines and choose Import Brushes. Go to the folder where you located your new brush set and select them. If you have the new version of Photoshop, the brush set will be loaded in here at the bottom of the brushes and ready to use. You can change brushes however you like. Select the brush you would like to work on and open the brush settings panel. I'm only going to go over some of the basics here because otherwise this video gets undesirably long. On the brush tip shape tab, you can change the brush default size, rotation and roundness. Furthermore, you can change its hardness and spacing. I usually turn the spacing all the way down when I'm creating continuous brushes. Using the Shape Dynamics tab, you can see that there are some drop-down menus along with some other settings. You can adjust the sliders while seeing the changes happening to the brush in the live preview at the bottom. You can also test the brush without losing any of the changes. The drop-down menus are the controls of the effects you're setting to the sliders. For instance, we want the brush to have a lot of size jitter, and this amount should be controlled by the pressure sensitivity in your pen. Pen pressure is the usual control I use for brushes. On the Transfer tab, you can adjust the amount and controls of the brush transfer. I always use pen pressure as the control, and what it basically does is determining, based on how hard I draw, the opacity of the brush. So the harder the pressure, the higher the opacity of the brush. This is ideal for blending colors. When you're done with your brush, save it. Click the little icon at the bottom and give your brush a name. It will now appear as a part of your brush set. I've just opened my main brushes folder. This is the one that you can get on my Gumroad for free. I will usually use the standard round brush to color in the flats on my drawing. Now in this example, I have a purple flat and a green flat, which I want to blend together in the middle. To start blending, I will most often pick my dry blender brush. Sometimes it's a different brush, but the importance is that the brush's opacity is controlled by the stylus pressure. With one of the flat colors selected, lightly paint over some of the other flat color. What you get is a new color of the two flats blended together. The most optimal would be if the third color is 50% of each of the flats, but it really depends on what you're going for. Now use the eyedropper tool to pick up the new color and lightly paint it into the areas of the two flats. This will give you two new colors that you can then pick up with the eyedropper tool and start painting into your flats too. It can be a little tedious to keep selecting and painting the in-between colors, but it doesn't have to be perfect yet. When I think I have the colors that I will need for this specific blend of colors, I pick my soft round brush and lightly do the same thing again. The opacity on this brush is so low that the effect you will get is a much smoother gradient. Now, that's the all manual blending method. The other method I'll show you includes the smudge tool. Select the last brush in the set, the one called For Smudge Tool. You see the little icon of the hand here? That means that this brush is locked to the smudge tool. You don't need to select the smudge tool because when you pick this brush, it knows that you want to use the smudge tool. With your smudge tool selected, all you have to do is paint over the two flats and the smudge tool blends them for you. Depending on how much horsepower your computer has, the smudge tool might start lagging. If your computer can't handle the smudge tool and it lags too much, just don't use it. You'll end up hating it. What I usually do is a mix of the two methods I just explained. I like to be able to control my smudging and the colors I pick up, and I only use the smudge tool for big areas where the blending is very uneven. You should just find the method that works best for you. And that's the basics of blending. Now that we've gone over the basics, you're probably still left with a lot of questions regarding technique or how to do this or how to do that or what is the best way to do this and that. Well, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do a mini series of tips and tricks and tutorials with digital art, and I'm going to pick the subject based on the suggestions that you guys leave me. So each video will be featuring a specific subject or something that someone is wondering about, and we're going to look at how to work with it. So now I want you to go into the comments below and mention the topics that you would like for me to include in my mini series. I don't mind if you leave one suggestion or 50 of them, because I'm going to use them as inspiration for topics along with the ones that I pick myself. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more art videos. I'm currently working on setting up some sort of regular upload pattern, so stay tuned for that as well. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye! Too hard.